So, very pleased. I mentioned this at the beginning. We as we grow, all of those revenue streams, and we're able to bring in more and higher level and more the people that can really help us grow. We did not, as Barb said early on, do a lot of good training on our trees. We offer just an amazing laboratory for her classes to come out, and she can show them exactly what happens if you don't prune a tree when it's young and what it can look like. We are getting better at that with our partners, Leaf and Limb. They help us out. But it's also one of the things that our new director of horticulture, Greg Paige, and I talk about quite a bit, both taking care of trees when they're young and salvaging what we can with the older trees without having those big cuts like Barb was showing. But Greg Paige, brand new, a month or two with us here at the Arboretum, but we've known each other for decades now. Greg has been at many public gardens, the Cincinnati Zoo, which I was talking with somebody about what a great horticulture program is there. Swarthmore, the Scott Arboretum up at Swarthmore in outside of Philadelphia. He spent the last basically the time I was here, he's been at the Bartlett Tree Research Arboretum in Charlotte, which is one of the great arboretums in the world, but it's not a big public garden. It's open by appointment to groups and things like that, and hosts a lot of educational programming things. But Greg has been involved with the American Public Gardens Association and plant conservation programs and Magnolia Society and Oak Society and Maple Society and all these things for years and years, and is just a phenomenal plantsman, gardener, professional. So those of you who've been here for a while and those of you who are new are going to come back, you'll probably be seeing a lot more of Greg because he's got so much information to share. So right now, Greg's gonna talk about, some tips, 10-ish maybe tips on how to be a great, how to garden like a public garden professional. Greg?
Excellent. I'm a big advocate of things kind of linking together and syncing when I do these kinds of talks. So I think that's going to work out perfectly today. It usually happens by kismet. But I'm glad that all these things kind of link together. I'm going to talk really fast too. I've had a lot of coffee this morning, and I want to leave time for questions after. But I encourage you to reach out to us beyond this talk. Our emails are all accessible. I'll flash it up here at the very end. So if you don't get a chance to talk today, if you want to go home where it's warmer, we completely understand. It's nice to see this many people on a cold day, but please don't hesitate to reach out. That's kind of what we're here for. Also segueing into some conversations that I've had. I've been in public horticulture a long time, work with a lot of volunteer programs. One of the things that brought me here was our volunteer program. So if that's something you're interested in, talk to us about that. I see a few of our volunteers in the audience, and it's always nice to see that. Not only are they with us in the garden, but I love those relationships that we build over time. So ask about that kind of stuff too. All right, that's the end of my public service announcements. So this is kind of a broad topic, 10-ish. I didn't count them exactly. There might be more. I might have snuck a few in the back door. But 10 things that can kind of make you a public horticulture, make you a garden pro. And the very first most important thing to know is not just in the boardroom, in all factors of life, you have to dress for success. You have to look good while you're doing these sorts of things. There's nothing worse, and this kind of talks about something that Barb brought up. There's nothing worse than being somebody that's involved with gardens and plants, and you expect your family to pick up on all those cues. My mom is the worst for killing plants, giving bad information, peppering me for what's the best tree to plant in the yard. Here's 5, don't plant these 2, and then I come back and those are the 2 that are in the yard. This is my daughter. She's now 18 years old at NYU. could care less about gardens and plants. But whenever we did our containers out front, we couldn't do anything until she was coiffed. So that's very important. You got to look good when you're doing this stuff for peace of mind. I also come by it honest. This is me. Don't pay attention to the date right there. Mark has make me feel really old talking about how long I've been doing this, but it's just part of it. This is my mom, nice pants mom. But this segues into what I really wanted to mention is protecting yourself from the sun. I've done this for a long time. I spend a lot of time outdoors backpacking, cycling, running. I've dealt with some of this stuff recently, and it's no fun to get examined in the doctor's office for sun issues. It can be a bit humiliating. To get things shaved and cut off of you is no fun. So it behooves you to pay attention to those sorts of things. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. So me personally, being follically challenged, it's important to find yourself a good garden hat and protect that part of your body because it's exposed. You can go overboard here. It's important to do that, and I think the benefit of something like this is it covers more than just your head. But those things are important. That's what I mean by dress for success. Barb talked a little bit about some tools, and I'll get to some pruners and some things in a minute, but you can't garden without getting dirty. And the older I get, I'm a big advocate of working smarter, not harder, and finding good garden tools is an important part of that as well. So many different things out there. Everybody has their own flavor. I've got a couple that I like a lot, and not hawking brands, but A.M. Leonard is a good place to look for stuff. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I came across this spade several years ago. It's 65 inches long, so that's about as tall as I am. It weighs almost 9 pounds. So this thing is going to bust up hard dirt when you're planting. It's going to break up root balls. It's a great thing for edging because you're not all hunked over a spade, like the D-handled ones, which are good as well if you're working on your hands and knees. But when you get to the age of me where your body makes weird noises and new things are hurting all the time, work harder, work smarter, not harder. I really love this tool. It's expensive, but it's worth every penny. That heft is really nice to have when you're planting or transplanting or even weeding. Bob talked about hand pruners. It behooves you to spend extra money on something that's good. These are the old standbys. They are listed by number. These are number 2s. They hold up really well. The Achilles heel of these guys is that little locking mechanism. It always kind of loosens up and gets in the way. I was talking to somebody that said they tape theirs back to keep it out of the way. When you buy these things, they come with a little tool to adjust all that stuff. That's what you should use to adjust that, not tools out of your toolbox. That'll keep those things healthy and last for a really long time. They make them for lefties. Any lefties in the audience? I'm a lefty too. Number 9s are the left-handed ones, and I've got these up here. You can come look at them after the talk. But that specificity is good when you're pruning all day long. They make a number 10, which is a lefty that has a rotating handle. I've managed and worked in 2 rose gardens, and I've got these up here as well. They're going to help with that fatigue of pruning all day long. They're really hard to get used to, but that helps a little bit. And it makes a huge difference if you're pruning all day long. But I really like Felcos. They last a long time. Everything on here is replaceable. Not too terrible to put together and sharpen. We do a lot of rainy day volunteer projects where we're cleaning and sharpening and working on our pruners. And don't be surprised if I do a class on that at some point in time, because I like to tell people the best way to take care of your things. I learned this Okatsuni. I don't know, I'm saying that wrong. You said it the right way. These are great. I like the simplicity. Beating the dead horse of what Barb said, the way they lock is nice. And in your pocket, I've ruined probably more pants than you. And I ruined a very expensive sofa last year, sitting down in the house talking to somebody, because they are very sharp. But I like the simplicity of those. They're really good, and they last a long time as well. Pruning saws also, Barb talked about Silky. They don't make a better saw than that. You can buy replacement blades. There's different sizes, different styles. The cases are great. Can't say enough good things about them. They've got belt loops in some occasion. If you're really hardcore, and a lot of our tree climbers at Bartlett use these, they strap to your leg. They're really, really good. Very, very sharp. I can show you where I had 8 stitches on my finger several years ago from putting those back in, not on white carpet though, but really, really good. Corona is another brand that's easy to find. The folding ones are good. These have a locking mechanism, so they're not going to fall back on your hand. Really, really good tools for the garden. This is another tool that I've used all my life, and I've worked in gardens where we gave these to our volunteers because it's good to use at home. This is a Japanese soil knife. It's also called a hori hori. This is a brand that A.M. Leonard has kind of made for themselves. They're great for weeding, planting annuals, even cutting roots if you're planting with that serrated edge. That orange handle is a godsend because I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've laid things down in the garden and walked away and find them 10 years later. That's going to stand out in the dirty soil or leaf litter. You're going to see that and be less likely to lose it. If you still lose it, you can tie something to the end so that it kind of gives you a little extra visual. But really, really good tool with multiple uses. So where do you find this stuff? These people are kind of nice. I think they sell stuff there too. I would encourage you to think globally and act locally. Look for sources close to home, not just for tools, but for expertise. I'm not going to say don't go to the big box stores, but these people know about plants, about garden tools, about gardening. Champion those people. And I've just moved here from Charlotte, and I've got a date with Bree Arthur to visit all of these places and go see these so that I can tell people to go there and shop there and champion them. Look there first, and there's a ton of mail order sources. A.M. Leonard used to be commercial only years ago. They're all over the web, easy to peruse. You can get a hard catalog sent to you, or just look online. Anything to do with gardening, horticulture, greenhouse stuff, they sell it. And that spade I showed is a brand that they make, and they make their own version of that soil knife as well. They also make hand pruners, but I would stick with these 2 brands. If you really want to go into deep, dark waters, this is a Japanese company. I'm not sure where they're based out of in the States. It might be California. That's worth a Google, just to look at some of the beautiful tools that they sell. They also sell garden clothing and things that are kind of Japanese-centric. I've been lucky to travel to Japan several times, but really, really pretty functional tools there. It's worth a look. They also have a pruning book that's very helpful, but that's worth a cup of coffee and a 30-minute look on the internet, just kind of going through their catalog. Chef recommends. This is a whole nother talk, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but something that we practice here, and I've practiced every place I've worked, is maintaining some kind of sustainable landscape management. So that is a way of working your garden where you're preserving the earth and all the things that entails. Not going to go through all of these. This is another talk, but we try to practice that out in the garden, and we spread that to our volunteers as well. One factor of that is integrated pest management. That's a multi-pronged approach to managing your landscapes using biologicals, cultural practices, and kind of the last effort is chemical controls of things. This is something that I'm going to do a talk in May, I think, that'll touch on this to a degree and tie in using beneficial insects into the landscape. Again, whole nother talk here. One important factor of integrated pest management is being out in your garden, looking for things before they become problems. That's kind of crucial. Maintaining a diverse landscape. Diversity is a good thing in all forms of life. Being out in your garden, using IPM practices that meet your threshold of tolerance. Some people don't want anything to look bad in their garden. Some people have a little bit more tolerance for things to look shaggy. Knowing what insects are, keep the good guys around, and get educated, come to these sorts of things. So if you saw these in your garden, is this something to be afraid of? Are these good guys or bad guys? But just knowing the difference is that. And I'm not going to steal my thunder for May. If you want to know more about that, you got to come back in May. What if you saw these all over your plant? Is this something to freak out and be afraid of? This is a hickory horned devil, a beautiful, beautiful moth. If you had 100 of those on your tree, I'd be scared to death, but one's not going to hurt anything. Engaging with your landscape, being out and looking at things and catching problems before they become problems. Mark had mentioned soil earlier today, and pretty much everything stems from that, having good, healthy soil. Yes, we have clay, but you can work with clay. There's lots of minerals in it. There's good water holding capabilities. It's learning how to work with and not fighting against, which is important. And managing from the ground up. When I was in college, tree care involved looking up at a tree, but so much of what's going on in that soil and roots, that's where it's at. So if you're new to the area and you don't know what's going on out in your soil, get a soil test. I think that's free through the state. I'm not 100% sure, but that's going to tell you what's going on, what kind of nutrients you need, organic matter, all those very important things. And the health of your soil is going to determine what types of plants you use and how well they're going to perform. So important component and the very first step in getting that cottage garden, getting those sorts of things going. Nothing drives me crazier than to go around my neighborhood in the fall and see the big piles of leaves and bags. So maintaining and encouraging organic matter back into your garden, that's an important thing that we do here because a lot of our soils are low in organic matter. And when you're doing this every year, you're taking away free organic matter from your yards. So I don't know. I'm the kind of person that will go around my neighborhood and drag these bags back home and dump them in my beds, dump them on the lawn and run the lawnmower over to get that organic matter back into the soil. I would even take these to work on occasion. So a simple way to do that is just to mow over them. Don't rake your leaves. We keep a lot of leaves on the ground here for that organic matter. It's also a place for beneficial insects to kind of hang out until they go through their life stages in the spring. And any lawnmower can work. You can buy these mulching blades, which work good, and just raise and lower your tires so that you're not choking your mower out. From a commercial standpoint, this kind of stuff is available. You can collect the leaves and dump them right where you want to. I don't think we're going to buy those. Those are pretty expensive for our homes. Excuse me. Next thing I want to talk about, and a very important tip for the health of your plants in the landscape, is how you plant. And again, this is a whole other talk. I'm not going to go into great detail. I'll hit some of the highlights. Most of what we're going to plant in our garden are things in containers. And the problem with containers is, depending on how long they've been there, you're going to have a lot of girdling roots that are in that pot. And it's important to break up that horizon so that those roots go out into your new soil. There's a lot of talk and for years about the nursery industry using pots that keep those roots from girdling. But I'm not seeing a lot of these at nurseries because this system is expensive. It doesn't work with a lot of systems. There's a lot of good research and science behind this, but it really is taking a slow start and it isn't as prevalent as we would like to see. Most things you see are going to be in pots like this. And it's important to break up the root system. This is one that we did some trial work at Bartlett on, a root maker. Again, they're great, but sometimes cost prohibitive and not a lot of folks are using them in the trade. So you get your plant from these folks back here and you want to plant it. A lot of times they're going to be root bound. You don't need to keep this pot. You can cut that pot up to get that plant out of there if you're having trouble with that. And then we go to town ripping up that horizon, that root zone. This is just a little hand cultivator. We affectionately used to call those root ticklers. And to watch this is pretty frightening to most people, but we're trying to rip up that horizon as much as we can and actually get rid of a lot of that soilless mix so that those roots are going to be able to go into its new home. And like Barb said, plants are extremely resilient. They can handle this with the right cultural practices and the right follow through. So here's a cherry that we're using for a research project. No root flare, that's a whole nother talk. Lots and lots of girdling roots. We're ripping that thing up, and this is what we ended up with. All those roots are going to be able to go into its new home, a new horizon. So once we've done that, pulling in the native soil around it, if you're able, we tell people to water that in so it kind of settles it out, gets rid of air pockets, and then come back with mulch and organic matter and water the whole thing again. So backfill with the existing soil. You don't want to put a bunch of nice loose compost in there because you're going to create another pot and those roots aren't going to go into its new area. So use a lot of that native soil. Use fertilizer only if you've had a soil test and it says that you need it. You generally don't need to fertilize new trees. The organic matter is going to do a world of good when you put mulch back on. Irrigate thoroughly because you've just ripped up that nice new soft root system and it's going to help settle the soil around the plant. And mulch, the most important, cheapest, easiest way to improve that plant's health is to add that organic matter. A lot of talk and discussion in the trade about mycorrhiza, biostimulants, compost tea. The jury's still out on that stuff, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So mulching, very, very crucial to our gardens. 3 to 4 inches is plenty. Keep it off that root flare on trees and shrubs because that area is not as sensitive to having stuff up against it and can cause health concerns. So 2 to 4 inches is usually plenty of mulch. Bark chips, leaf litter, compost, hardwood mulch, they all work really well. We've all seen these everywhere we go. We call these affectionately mulch volcanoes. There's no reason to do that, and it causes lots of problems. In some cases, this tree will develop a secondary root system in that area, and it'll dry out and cause lots of stress. Again, this is a whole another rabbit hole of a talk. It can get kind of hydrophobic if you're just piling it on top of itself. So it's good to kind of break that up and add new organic matter. And we do a lot of mulching here. No reason to do this. Not going to help these guys at all. So benefits of mulch. They help with soil temperature. If you think about the weather we've had lately where it's all these big swings, we've done trials when I was at Bartlett on the temperature of soil under different types of mulches, but it helps keep that temperature, those swings from being extreme when you've got mulch around your plants and in your garden. It helps hold moisture in the ground, which is important. It supplies organic matter as it's breaking down, which is crucial to plant health. It reduces compaction. If you're stomping around in there, you're not stepping right on the soil and infecting the roots. It keeps that soil from washing away, prevents erosion, and it eliminates competition with turf grass that may come in around those plants and trees that are in your yard as well. Good irrigation practices are very important here. We have a lot of irrigation systems throughout the garden, but there's a lot of hand watering that happens initially. Rule of thumb, we like to tell people every 5 to 7 days when you're not getting natural rainfall. We err on the side of tough love here, and I always have in all of my gardens. You can do more harm to plants by overwatering than pretty much anything else you do to a plant. So kind of err on the side of tough love. It's also kind of a good practice to water thoroughly and less frequently, so deeper so the water goes down. And big picture in being a good gardener and working with plants is it takes a lot of patience. I have killed 1 million plants in my lifetime, both on purpose and not so much. And some of those things were because of not being patient. But this is an important thing to take home, not just with gardening, but with our lives in general. And resources, tons of resources out there, and I encourage you all to peruse some of the things that we've got going on in the future. Lots of educational opportunities. And there are so many books out there, and I would be remiss if I didn't plug this, and it's right over there. But just a handful of things that are on my desk. And if you come here, get to know this guy. This is Tim. He works with us in the garden. He's a rabid source of information and wrangling of staff and volunteers. So he is here all the time, and he's somebody to get to know when you get to come back. So that's the quick and dirty. Here's my email address. Shoot me an email if I raise questions or if you think of something when you leave. If you're interested in volunteer stuff, we can steer you in the right direction or get you more information on that and classes and things that we have going on.